Welcome to episode 15 of Project Footballer. Once again, we are incredibly grateful for the feedback we've been receiving from the last episode. As Sean is away on exciting WMF business, we felt it was only right to bring back Rob Ursel to fill in for Sean. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the link between football and the educational system. We'll explore life beyond football. So without further ado, we'd like to introduce James. Welcome, James.
Hi guys, thanks for having me
on.
Thank you.
We're extremely, pleased to have you on. Your journey is quite unique. And I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I suppose just for a brief overview, I was in the academy system my whole life. From the age of 6, I was playing with QPR and signed my first contract at 9. I followed a pretty typical route, I suppose, at that point. Progressing through the age groups, signed my schoolboy scholarship at 16, and I suppose that's where it takes a little bit of a different turn, because instead of signing a scholarship like most boys, I decided to take the decision to do a schoolboy scholarship, which meant I could go to school as well as continuing playing football. And then after 2 years of that, when the decisions for pro contracts were coming around, I decided to take the opportunity to go to Harvard University on a football scholarship out there.
Instead of
signing my pro contract. It was a little bit before the time that they were being offered, where I had to make the decision. So I suppose I'll never really know if I was going to be offered my pro or not. But I decided to take that decision. I thought it was the best one for me at the time. And I would say throughout my time in the academy, I was always relatively confident of receiving my contract. In my sort of when I was 9, 10, all the way up to 14, I'd say academy football was always really beneficial for me. It always pushed my development. But around the time that decisions were coming, I was always quite confident that I would receive my next contract. Always quite nervous around the time, as I think most people would be. But I was always kind of progressing really well. I was always really disciplined, fully committed, would work hard all the time, and always felt I was pushing towards the top end of the academy. But I suppose as you get older and older, you never really, even though I was confident of receiving my contract, I didn't know where I'd be in 5 years' time. So that's why I decided to take the offer to go to Harvard.
Incredible. I mean, not many people I know would make that decision. So yeah, fair play to you. Where did you see yourself, under 11s, 12s? Where did you see yourself in the group? Top end of the group, or did that help to make your decision before you received your pro contract?
So I would always say I was pushing towards the top end of the group in academy football. I think I was one of the people that would be selected to play in the older age groups. I think I was maybe in the top category that received the offer for a scholarship. I think I was maybe the third one in my cohort. So I'd say, especially in the younger academy days, I was always quite confident and that I was one of the top players in the age group. Of course, I was always pushing myself. I was never comfortable with that. I was always trying to push myself, but I would say that I almost expected to get a contract and keep developing until I got further and further.
Yeah, just one thing on the development years. I think we'd agree, Mars, that a lot of kids that are playing academy football, it comes at some of the expense of their academic achievements.
Yeah.
How well did you balance that compared to players in your, let's say, another player in a similar position in your academy, in your age group? What would you say? Would you say they were doing much academically compared to what you were doing?
Well, I think I was really lucky in the fact that my parents were always telling me that I needed to balance my education with my football.
I'm not saying achieving as much as you, because that's dependent on their academic level, but the amount of hours that you were putting into it compared to what they were doing.
So yeah, I was just thinking, because my parents were always telling me how I needed to balance both my academics and my football, and they were telling me to really strive and do as well as I could in everything that I committed to. So I think I always had the mindset of, when I was in school, that was as important as my football. And therefore, when I was both studying and playing, I was making sure I was putting in the hours to keep my grades good, and I always wanted to achieve really well. Whereas I think maybe other boys around me were maybe more football focused. But I think that was more a part of the fact I was really fortunate in that position, that I had the people behind me to tell me how important it was to remain at the best of my ability in both.
For sure. Do you think that you put less hours into your football than any of your teammates?
I don't think I put less hours in.
I'm not saying you worked less. You know what I mean? I'm saying you just had less time.
I'd say when I was younger, I don't think that was the case. However, when I became older at 16, 17, 18, that's when it became much more of a sacrifice, in terms of the fact that when we were younger, in the younger academy days, I think you have a very regimented schedule, and you can put hours in after playing, and you're playing pure fun, pure enjoyment. And when I became probably about 16, maybe around the time of GCSEs, that's when there was much more of a sacrifice for me. I probably wasn't playing as many hours as other boys. I think the thing that would probably highlight that most is when I did my schoolboy scholarship, which meant that I could play football and go to school. I would have to maybe miss a couple of sessions in the week in order to get my school hours in. And I would also have to sacrifice some of my gym hours, try and make that up after in the evening at my local gym perhaps. So that's probably where the biggest hit came in.
Just for some of our listeners, if you'd like to explain what happens, what age did you start to go into digs, and live away from parents, and how you managed to balance that life?
So again, I suppose this is also where it takes a little bit of a different turn from the conventional route, because most people, when they sign their scholarship at 16, they'll move into digs, so they're more local to the club and makes travelling a lot easier. Whereas for me to be able to go to school as well, to the school that I wanted to in my local area, it was much easier for me to stay at home. So I would stay at home, and that would make travelling into training a lot harder, but it meant going to school was easier, so it gave me more of that balance.
Okay, brilliant. Just for our listeners, digs is where players go and live with a host family. So they are closer to the training ground and then can train pretty much.
Yeah, it just makes it easier to go into the training ground every day.
Cool, brilliant. Did you see examples of players where they didn't perhaps take that route and just was solely on focused on football and wasn't bothered about the education side?
Yeah, definitely. I think in England it's such a perception that all young players will go into the academy and then push for their pro contract, and because you're taken out of school at such a young age, that's all footballers ever really know. It's almost
tunnel vision.
Yeah, basically from such a young age as well. From the age of 13, 14, when you're in the academy, you're told you'll go on to get your scholarship, then you'll move into digs and become a footballer full time. And you have some sort of education behind you for that 2-year scholarship. I think you complete a level 3 BTEC course, or it varies amongst players. But I think I've definitely seen now, especially looking at people across the country in the age groups above me, how it's all turning out, and how maybe they let their education go at such a young age. And because in England that's the way you're told to think, that's how it goes for a lot of boys.
I mean, it's clear to see you had family support behind you, and sometimes it might not be the case for others, right? Because
definitely.
maybe the family put pressure on them they see that football is the way out for them and to try and make something of themselves. So I can see how that easily happens.
I think a really important part of James's message is the fact that, yes, he was really committed to his football and it was taking him places. Not everyone gets a pro, whether he would or he wouldn't. Some people wouldn't. Okay, but the important message for me is that he was really committed to his football, but it didn't stop him being really committed to other parts of his life as well. I think from some of the podcasts I've watched already, I think a little bit of the message seems to be you need to be just bloody minded, committed to football. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you can also commit to other parts of your life, and I think that's an important part of his message, really.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It seems like a more holistic approach. And some things get taken out of our hands and we don't know what can happen, so to have that as another route to go into is surely beneficial. How did your family put pressure on you to make that decision to perhaps go to Harvard, or how did that come about? How did the Harvard situation come about?
Yeah, so the Harvard situation came about with a pure strike of luck, really. When I was training, the Harvard scout, he came to QPR's training ground. He was just in England doing he was there as part of a tour and was doing some scouting, I think, and came into the training ground. And I was really lucky in the fact that when he was there, the coaching staff around me, at this point I was looking into American universities as a plan B in case I didn't get my pro. And he was there, and I struck up a conversation with him, and my coaches almost urged me to have a conversation with him as well, just in case things didn't work out. And they knew I was looking at those options as well. And I'd say from then the conversation almost snowballed. We kept in contact. They were looking for a player similar to me in my position as well that could go out there in my age group. And we kept in contact, and I think as time rolled on, I became more and more interested, and almost the interest that Harvard offered me as well. It almost helped change my perception on the situation. I felt as if I pushed really hard and really went for trying to get the offer from Harvard, then that may be the best option for me. It was a massive strike of luck and real right place, right time. However, I feel as though I had prepared myself really well for that situation. There's a great sports lawyer out there called Daniel G, and he always says luck is where your preparation meets your opportunity. And I feel like that was really where that message was highlighted to me.
We've actually had Daniel on the podcast.
Oh, really?
Have you?
Yeah, we've had him on the podcast. Yeah, no, he's a really good guy. Good guy.
So that message almost really worked in my favour, and I think when that opportunity came up, it was a great chance for me to almost take it and really push for it.
So there was no pressure. Was the decision made solely by you, or was it your parents swayed you, or what would you say?
I think as I mentioned earlier, my parents were always keen for me to just do the best I can in what I was focused on. They didn't really want me to do anything half-heartedly, so I could take on as much as I could and go with that. And I was really happy at the time of when I had these two decisions to make, in the fact that I didn't feel so much that they were pushing me in one direction or the other. I think although they gave their side of the story, they very much put the decision in my hands, which was nice. And I think they just made it, highlighted the key points to me, told me if I take this route what my future could look like, and also that I also only really get one chance to fight for a professional contract at a club like in the academy. So they highlighted the pros and cons of both, and that let me almost make up my mind. And it wasn't an easy decision at all, but I'm quite glad in the decision I made.
Good. What way did they sway?
I think they were more keen for me to take the option I did and go to America.
I mean, you say you only get one chance in the academy, but you only get one chance really at that.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think they were pressuring me at all to go one way or the other. I think my mum's a teacher as well, so maybe that pushed her decision in that direction. But I was really happy in the way that everybody around me, in terms of my support network, even the club, my parents, my friends, they were all supporting me to choose the best decision for me. And what was really refreshing was that the club were helping me make that decision as well. They helped me so much all the time throughout my journey with balancing school, and they knew it was a massive factor for me. And when the opportunity to go to Harvard came up, they didn't hold me back from pursuing that option.
They can't have had many kids in their academy that have got that chance ever.
Yeah.
You mentioned before when Harvard came knocking, they encouraged you to speak to them. When you made the decision, they were completely fine with it, or were they trying to convince you, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity here?
Yeah, so it was a fine balance almost, having that opportunity, because I was working so hard to get my pro, and I also had this in the background, and I didn't know at what point I had to make a decision. But I remember going into my meeting when it was a little bit before they were going to be offering pros, almost like a mid-season review, to tell you what you would need to improve on, what you need to keep doing, how likely you are to get that pro at the end. And that was the decision. That was the time I was going to tell them that I would be taking the opportunity to go to Harvard. And I was so nervous going into that meeting, just because I had no idea what their reaction would be. And I remember the meeting was going on, and I was going to mention it at the end, and I can't remember a single word just because I was thinking the whole time about how the news would break.
But imagine being that coach that tells someone not to go to Harvard. You can't.
You can't
do that.
But I remember when I said it, and the coaching staff that were in there were thrilled for me. They were really proud.
No, you would be.
Really proud of me that the opportunity had come up and that I was deciding to take it, and there was no spite in the way they took it. They were fully really proud. I think because I'd been in the academy such a long time, and they were just really proud that I was going to be taking that chance. And even after that, we still had a pretty good chunk of the season left, and they were still allowing me to train, still pushing me to my best. And then even the year after, when I wasn't allowed to go to America because of the COVID restrictions, the club still let me come back and train throughout that whole time. So I was really grateful for the way they handled the whole situation and allowed me to keep reaching my potential.
Brilliant. What was some of your peers' reaction? I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. It was similar, to be fair.
Okay.
I think in the past, when I was one of the only people still going to school, a lot of people maybe didn't really understand why I would choose that decision. They would almost say like, "Oh well, don't you want to be a footballer? If you want to be a footballer, shouldn't you be fully committed?" And I didn't see it that way at all. I still felt I had as equal chances as making it a footballer as anyone else. But for me, it was just about having the backup option, the plan B in case it didn't work out. My teammates were amazing. They were so supportive throughout the whole time. I would never get comments when I was rushing in late to training or anything like that in a blazer or my school uniform. And I was sitting in a meeting while everyone was in their club tracksuit, and I was the only one wearing school stuff.
I probably would have made a comment.
And then when I told them the news after my meeting, similar reaction, all really proud, really happy. I think because they knew how well I had done balancing both at the same time, they were all really happy for me when I told them, and again helped me out in training, and it took a massive weight off my shoulders for the next couple of months while I was training there.
Like you mentioned, you did manage to balance both. But do you see how, for those who are perhaps excelling academically, how football can be a distraction?
I think it's hard to call it a distraction, because I would never tell any young aspiring footballer to not play football and to not have that goal of becoming a professional footballer. I just think it's about having a good balance, having the know-how of how important your education can be to give you a more sustainable future. I think that's probably the way that I would look at it, and I don't think football should be seen as a distraction. I think every young footballer with a passion to make it should take that journey. I think my message should be that they have that balance in the classroom as well, and they make sure that they're giving themselves a good foundation for if football doesn't work out.
And how do you balance it then? How did you manage to balance the journey?
So it was really difficult, and again, I'm really grateful for the support network that I had, and I think that was really key in helping me. And I understand that not everyone can achieve that, in the fact that I was really grateful for the way my school handled the whole situation. My school and the club had a really good relationship, which made everything so much better. Also, the way the club handled me was excellent and allowed me to pursue both things. And I imagine that isn't always the case. So I would really push for all academies to almost help students who feel that way, to help them out in that regard. And I think the best thing for me was it helped with my discipline a lot and my time management. So I would often go to school in the morning for the first couple of hours, then make my way to the training ground, and then after a training session.
How far was that journey?
It would be about 40 minutes to an hour. And then after that, go back to school and finish the afternoon there. So that time management was really difficult, and then having to make up for the gym sessions that I'd missed in the evening whilst finishing my schoolwork. It was a tough balance, but it's definitely something I think it helps build a lot of discipline.
Some good life skills there.
Yeah, definitely. It helped me stay very grounded and really motivated a lot of the time as well.
We've had some examples within the company where some kids who have signed to a professional academy, QPR actually, who've managed to then gain scholarships to secondary schools. Was that your case, or did you just go to a state school? Or
So I went to a school in my local area. I went to a grammar school, and then when the decision to not everyone decides to go to university, but it's quite a common route. I think at that time, I instead of I meant sixth form. Not everyone decides to go to sixth form. Some people do, some people don't. And I wanted to continue my education into sixth form, and that's when I decided to make the decision to take a schoolboy scholarship.
But it's obviously having Mason now, knowing that it's a possibility where you can focus on the education side and he can gain entries into really top schools in London. I almost feel like that's the route to go. So you can have a bit of both. Well, I mean, what would you, if you had a son or daughter?
Yeah, no, I mean, ideally that keeps both routes open, doesn't it? I mean, the other thing is that we've been saying on a lot of the podcasts that I've been hearing is about you're either a Premier League footballer or you're not. It's kind of the message that I think we've kind of unintentionally sent out a little bit through the guests or whatever. But I mean, I never played in the Premier League or anything like that, but I've worked in football all my life and I've loved it. I've got so many memories and I've learned a lot and everything. There's not just one route to being a footballer, for example, or to making a living through football, or to enjoying football and making a living somewhere else.
Yeah, no, football definitely does give you so much opportunity, and I agree with what you just said, Rob. If you had to make the decision again, would you choose the same path?
I think so. Yeah, I being halfway through my college experience, I'm really happy at the moment. I think it was the best decision for me. I don't have any regrets. I always thought the way I'll truly know will be in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, looking down the future. I'll be able to see where a lot of the people in my position in the academy system, where they ended up. I think almost the benefit in that is the fact I was in the academy system for so long. I have a really broad scope of players that I can look at and kind of compare. But I'm really happy with the decision that I made. I think it's definitely was the best decision for me.
And you're still playing as well. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, off camera, you were saying you were in some games you were still playing in front of crowds of 3,000 and whatnot. So you know that is still going on, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the best part for me is that I still get to pursue playing football. It's such an amazing experience being a student athlete in America. And also, I suppose you've always got the opportunity to be entered into the draft or to play in the second divisions in America. Or after you finished your university experience, you can come back to England and try and work your way into the footballing system. So it definitely leaves the door open. I feel like it just provides you with a really good breadth of opportunities that you could take.
Yeah, I've got a few friends who have been out to America on scholarships, full scholarships. None of them come back. So this might be the last time we see you.
Yeah.
No, I mean they all love the life out there. So,
Yeah.
and they will end up getting it. Well, they've all ended up getting pretty good opportunities out of football. Yeah. No.
But is that something you're, you know, keeping the door open? If you know, once you finish your studies and you might come back to England to still pursue that, or
I think the best thing for me is that the door is still open if I want to take it. I think when you're in America, you need to, or you have the chance to be able to put as much into your football as you want. And again, I'm in a really lucky position that I've almost been balancing football and school my whole life. So I'm quite used to being able to put a lot of effort into both. And it's definitely a door that would still be open for me.
and this scholarship through Harvard, is that a full ride, or?
So it's a bit different for the Ivy League universities, which is probably some of the names like Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Those schools, in terms of they make a decision based off your family income. So I suppose it is more fair in that way, and you can pay what you can afford. But I have friends that have gone on almost more performance-based scholarships out to America. And there are other really top universities that provide performance-based scholarships outside of the Ivy League. Stanford's a really great example, Wake Forest, Notre Dame. So there are some really top universities that provide good scholarships.
Brilliant. Just going back onto the point where I was saying there are schools, it's happening more and more, where schools here, secondary schools, private secondary schools are, you know, picking up boys that are and girls who are at academies, and it's almost like it's almost prestigious for them to get the best players in these academies to come and for them to go into their school. If you were to go back, would you perhaps pursue one of those schools?
It's a good question. I don't really know. I think at the time it would have to be something that I would maybe look at. I was really happy with the way that I did it in terms of the fact the way I went to school and the way I balanced my football. I think even that must be something that's really growing, because even when I was making that decision, I wasn't really aware that was a possibility. And I think that's something even for me in terms of taking a schoolboy scholarship that not many people are even too aware that is an option for them.
I mean, when you said it sounded to me like I can't think of anyone I've encountered that's done that.
And I think QPR has a really good track record of being able to provide schoolboy scholarships and having that relationship to develop their players. But I think across the country it's almost unheard of. So it'll be interesting to see, hopefully in a few years' time, how it's all. I think the most important thing is that it'll be made aware to young athletes, and more importantly to their parents, in the fact that it is possible to be able to do both. Because I just feel like at the moment, for young players and for parents, the only way is a narrow route for them.
How did you become aware of it?
So for me, my parents were very keen on me to go to
so
school.
if they hadn't have actively pushed for it, you probably would have just gone to QPR and stopped studying.
Definitely, yeah. I think the fact that my parents were always really keen for me to have a good education behind me. When I turned 16 after my GCSEs, they were asking questions of the club in terms of allowing me to continue going to school and doing my A-levels. And really luckily for me as well, the club had previously done it with another boy, so they had that experience in being able to coach both. But that's where I think QPR was really beneficial for me, in the fact that they were very supportive in that element. But I think if you went up and down the country to other academies, it maybe wouldn't even have been put on the table, and that would have left me in a really difficult place, because I wouldn't have been able to. I would have had to probably choose one or the other. When it's not.
So let's say your parents didn't push you towards education. They just weren't thinking about it. Who do you think would need to do better by you? Would you think it would be the clubs or the schools in terms of helping you to be aware of that possibility, or both?
Well, I suppose for clubs it's a weird one, because they need their players to be fully invested, and
so do schools.
And so do schools, but I think it almost becomes put on the players, in the fact that the players and the parents, in the fact that for some people signing their scholarship would be the best way for them. However, for other people, it would be really beneficial to carry on doing both. So I think as long as people would be made aware of the fact that that was an option, I think the onus or the responsibility would come to the players, in the fact that they just have that awareness that there's more of a decision that they could be making.
I know Tony Pulis, who managed several teams in the Premier League. He's coming up with a plan for players to be more aware of that educational side. Obviously, the percentages of how many do make it pro and go on to play a professional level can be quite low, even at 16. So yeah, he's put it to the Premier League and to the FA. So hopefully, there will be more cases where, or at least more players are aware that this is a route that they can go down.
I think the biggest thing for me, when I was 15, 16, I had all the small steps for me in order to become a professional footballer, and you're not really thinking about what you're going to be doing in the future. You're thinking very much as, I'll focus on getting my next scholarship, I'll focus on getting my next contract. And even for me, when I had my A-levels behind me, I was thinking, if I don't get my pro, I'll work it out. I'll go to university, or I can get a job straight away or something. But I didn't really know the little steps in between that would get me there. I just knew the final goal. And I think it would be great if people became a little bit more aware and didn't make that mistake, or didn't think the same way that I did in that situation, in the fact they really thought about, well, if it doesn't work out, what next? Because I think a lot of people end up signing that contract on a really short-term deal as a young player, and then in a year's time, or even in 2 years' time, it doesn't work out, and then they're sat there thinking, well, what now? And I think it's best if you just have that plan B, or that backup option, in case you get found in that position.
And also, it can even be quite detrimental to their playing, because if they're thinking, this is it, this is my only way,
it's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure on themselves.
Yeah.
And we know it needs to be more of a relaxed and to be able to play freely and still enjoy it and not feel that pressure at such a young age, right?
Yeah. I just think when you're a kid, when you're 15, 16, the only thing you want is to be a professional footballer, and you know nothing better. That's all you're going to want to be able to do. And I definitely had that mindset of getting my next contract, getting into the first team, then I'll become a pro and I'll play in front of 20, 30,000 people. And if you look at the statistics, it's just not that common for everybody to be able to do that. And I think what happens to a lot of people is you lose sight of what your career would actually look like. And again, I would never discourage anyone from pursuing that goal. I just think it's really important that you think about the little steps in between and how you get to that goal. And even if that doesn't work out, what do you have on the side in case it doesn't work out that way?
Was there ever a point where you think you had that you could see that your teammates put themselves under more pressure than you because you had that plan B, something to fall back on?
I don't think I've seen that yet. However, I do think if I was still involved in the academy system, I would perhaps start to see that now that I'm a little bit older. Because I think to get your scholarship is extremely, extremely tough and strenuous.
You mean because they're at an older age and closer to the
I think so.
Make or break time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think when you come out of the academy at 16, or when you sign your scholarship at 16, you still have quite a long way to go.
Yeah.
In the process to make it to
you
the
feel
first
like
team.
you've got a bit of a safety net of a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're about my age now, 20, even a few years older, and you're on the shorter term contracts, and if you don't get that and that next professional contract, you need to almost get into the real working world. If you can't pick up a club, and I think when you're younger, you always have that chance to be able to go to another club, or you can always think, oh, I can go to school, I can still do something in education. Whereas when you're a little bit older, maybe the options are a little bit more narrow.
So just for our listeners, how long was the scholarship deal for?
2 years.
2 years.
16. Yeah.
And then what was the offer on the pro contract? How many years?
So I think it really varies amongst clubs. I think if I was put in that position again, and I would probably be on a 1 year contract, I imagine, coming out of my scholarship.
So that's hence why you're saying when you are on that one deal, that short term deal, that's when the pressure really comes, right? Because if you're not pushing to make the first team, then you're looking, where else might I end up, right?
Definitely. I think, again, it really varies amongst clubs, but I think even in the best case scenario, as an 18-year-old, if you get a long-term 4 or 5 year contract, by the time that runs up and you're 22, 23, if you're not knocking on the first team door by then, and you get let go at the age of 23, you still have so much time left. And if you don't end up being able to find another club, I think a lot of players will find themselves in a situation where they don't really know what to do. So I think my biggest advice would be for 15, 16-year-olds to come up with or think about a longer term plan. In the next 5 years, where do you want to be? And if plan A doesn't work out, what is plan B? And do you have all the steps to make sure that works as well? And even if that doesn't work, then what could a different potential avenue be? And you don't have to have it all worked out, but I just think it's important to have the knowledge of what other options look like.
No, brilliant. No, I think the message has been fantastic, and it's good for our listeners and parents to know that there isn't just one way. You know, there are different avenues you can take, and you can balance both.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing.
I think
it doesn't take away from your football to have something else, and you should ideally. Not everyone is in that position, but ideally it'd be much better if you can have both.
Yeah. I mean, I've found it really useful and really informational. So thank you, James,
thanks,
for
James.
for coming on. and I'm sure our listeners would have found that very useful too. So appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Pleasure.
so much.
Thank you.